With UFC 302 done and dusted, I'll be giving you my best matchups to make with all the best fighters on the card that you can now see on the screen. Kicking it off with Jake Matthews, give him Themba Gorimbo, and I said this in the Barboza versus Murphy matchups to make video. If you haven't checked that out, check it out after this video. I'll leave a link in the description. But when it comes to this matchup, I do think that putting this on the early prelims of the UFC 305 card in Perth would just be fantastic. It's a great test for Gorimbo in the stand-up, and against someone with as much UFC experience as Matthew has, I think it's just a no-brainer for him. And then it's also just a super competitive fight in the grappling department as well. If Gorimbo wins this fight, it gives him a win over a veteran. And then if Jake Matthews wins this fight, it gives him a win over a hot prospect that's rising. Now, next up with Grant Dawson. As I said in the recap, Dawson needs to test himself not only on the feet, but with a fighter that can actually challenge him in the wrestling department as well. And to do that, obviously, you want someone with good name value trying to crack back into that top 15. And I think to stamp that ticket, he should take Makhachev Orolbai. Orolbai is very well-rounded. He almost took out Elvis Brenner on the feet and completely nullified Uros Medic's KO threat with his grappling as well. He submitted him. And yeah, I mean, you've got threats pretty much from any direction when it comes to Makhachev Orolbai, which will be a very good test for Grant Dawson if he's really going to solidify himself in the top 15. Now, if either of these guys do beat each other, I mean, they are pretty much solidifying a top 15 fight, I think. So next up now, Jailton Almeida, Cyril Gane, 100%. I mean, the way that it is set up now, the heavyweight division, the top 5 to 10 ranked fighters pretty much are all have fights booked or have all just had fights. And this one is just the clear and obvious one where both fighters just don't have anything at the moment. I mean, you look at Almeida, he took no damage against Romanov, absolutely dominated him. And then Cyril Gane's been out since about September. And you look at Almeida coming off 302, I mean, he showed interest in it in his post-fight speech. Well, not his post-fight speech, the post-fight press conference speech that he had, pardon me. And, I mean, he's just got that opportunity there to utilize his superior grappling. It's a very big clash of styles matchup. So, not only that for Almeida, but then you got Cyril Gane who can showcase a striking clinic and possibly knock Almeida out. So, it's a big opportunity for both of them to make a statement in the heavyweight division. And for Almeida, it'll be his biggest test on the feet. Yes, I know Curtis Blades did knock out Almeida, but I mean, Cyril Gane overall is definitely better and much more clinical on the feet. And yeah, when it comes to this, I mean, whoever wins out of this fight, I mean, it's pretty much coming up to title contention realistically. I mean, whoever can win that, it's either straight up to the title next, depending on how the next fights play out, or it'll be a title eliminator fight next for whichever one wins. And I think that this would be great for a fight night headliner in around mid to late August, or possibly hold out for the Paris card coming up in late September. Obviously, you're going to need someone to headline that. It can either be Manon Fiorot, which I doubt it would be, because if you're Manon, no brainer, just wait for the title. She's 34 years old, just wait for it. Benoit Saint Denis, I mean, possibly it's definitely would have been a surefire thing if he beat Poirier, without a doubt. But the fact that he got knocked out like that against Poirier, I don't know if he would headline it. He could possibly co-main it. But, I mean, Cyril Gane's a heavyweight, a very fast heavyweight with good striking. So, I mean, he'll probably just get that headliner again, to be honest. Now, moving on to Roman Kopylov, man, I love this guy, honestly. Pretty much every fight this guy is in just leads to a finish one way or another, whether he is finishing someone or he is getting finished. And I honestly think to really give something to the fans, just by basically a guarantee, is by giving him Bruno Ferreira. I think this would be a fantastic, super fun top 15 eliminator fight between the two of them. I mean, if you have these guys matched up together, I highly doubt that you're not going to get a KO finish here. I think one of them is getting slept. And because, I mean, between the two of them, they have about 19 or 20 KO finishes within 28 to 30 fights. So they have a very high output of just finishing people. And they both do have something to prove. Both of them have come back from finishes, like them getting finished. Fluffy Hernandez finished Roman Kopylov by a submission, and then Bruno Ferreira got his head basically decapitated by Ruzaboyev. So they do definitely have something to prove. They're both on 1-fight win streaks at the moment. I mean, Bruno Ferreira just destroyed Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes has absolutely no chin. And then you've got Roman Kopylov, who did a fantastic job against Cesar Almeida. And yeah, honestly, it would just be a fantastic highlight reel finish for one of them, and that will definitely get them right into that top 15 from UFC standards. If they're one of them are finishing each other that badly, which I think they will, 100% no brainer, they're going to get a top 15 fight. And I think you do make this for a fight night in early to mid September, I reckon. Now moving on to Randy Brown. Man, since he lost to JDM, he's literally just been on a tear. I think he definitely deserves a top 15 shot now. I think it's pretty safe to say. And I think with a good challenge, I think the person to give him that challenge is Neil Magny. I think you give him that veteran with the same physical characteristics. Both of them are lengthy, both of them are rangy. I think they both have fairly similar styles, and they are both just well-rounded in general. And it'll be interesting to see how Randy Brown fares in this fight when it comes to his distance management. I mean, that distance management that he had against Dos Santos basically won him that whole entire fight, as well as just that clinical striking he had and the submission threats. But overall, mainly it was the distance management that he was utilizing, especially with the jabs and the teep kicks. And against Magny, he's not going to have that reach advantage there. I believe it'd be 1 or 2 inches either way. I'm not too entirely sure which one has the reach advantage out of the two of them. I'm pretty positive it's Magny though. So that's even more to the fact that, you know, it's a very good test for Randy Brown. So I would have said Kevin Holland for Neil Magny, but I think Kevin Holland will most likely stay at middleweight after he was just going on and on about, you know, the weight cut and not having to do it. And, you know, he's not really like, Kevin Holland's not really the type of fighter at the moment that's really pushing for, you know, the title fights or anything like that. He just wants fun fights. So I think if he can have fun fights and not have to cut a whole bunch of weight, I think it's more likely going to be the case that he's going to stay at middleweight. So basically, I'm just saying that, yeah, Neil Magny is most likely not going to be fighting Holland. So I think that next best thing is Magny fights Randy Brown. And honestly, I love this matchup. I think it would make an extremely technical fight in all the areas. As I said, they're both pretty well-rounded. And I think you put this on a fight night in late September or early October. Now, moving on to Kevin Holland. Paul Craig. Give him a great grappling test. I think that's something that would be very fascinating to see, especially he's just been getting better with his grappling, Holland. And it'll be fascinating to see how that goes against someone like Paul Craig, who's obviously extremely good off his back. But I think if Paul Craig and Kevin Holland fight, I mean, Holland's got that power. He's got that stiff power, and I wouldn't be surprised if he just sleeps Craig. But it's still definitely a challenge for him if it does go to the ground. And Paul Craig needs to prove himself to stay in that top 15 position, honestly. Like, with how active Kevin Holland's been and what he's done for that promotion, for the UFC, he more than deserves to be fighting a ranked opponent and fighting up in those rankings without a doubt. And I think Craig is that fair test for him. And, you know, Craig has been on that loss streak, so he seriously does need to prove himself. And I think it just makes for a very fun fight in terms of where the fight could actually go. And I mean, it's a good test for Craig as well to see if he actually, you know, fixes that boxing. Man, he needs, I'm not sure, honestly. I think he just needs new, like, boxing coaches or something like that. He needs something else in that striking department for him to get better and have an advantage there. And Kevin Holland definitely has that advantage. So you're looking at Kevin Holland having the advantage in the striking and then Paul Craig having the advantage in the grappling. And it'll be interesting to see if one can get the better of the other if Paul Craig gets the better of him in the striking or Kevin Holland gets the better of him in the grappling. I mean, it'll be fascinating to see if those improvements are there from both of them. And it would give Paul Craig the chance to redeem himself against a fan favorite. So I think that's why, in Paul Craig's sense, that's even a good reason as to why he should take it. And it's not like some up-and-comer or anything like that. Kevin Holland's a veteran, Paul Craig's a veteran, so I think it's only fair that that fight is made. And ultimately, that's just going to be great to push him back up the ranks. So I think you do make that for a fight night around, I reckon, mid to late September. Moving on to Paulo Costa. I mean, after being dominated by Strickland, it does put Paulo Costa in a tricky spot. Like, he is a fan favorite, and I think most people, as well as the organization themselves, they really want to be seeing Costa in those big fights. He just draws a lot of social media attention. And I think for Paulo at this point in time, when it comes to that middleweight division, there is one huge opportunity left. And it's Khamzat Chimaev. And it's going to be Khamzat Chimaev after Khamzat loses to Robert Whittaker. Yep, I've got Whittaker in that fight, which I'll break down more when the fight night actually comes. But if he beats Chimaev, he is right back onto the title run. If he's beating a hype train like that, yes, obviously Chimaev's stock will drop a bit if Whittaker beats him, but I don't think Whittaker will beat him decisively. So I think Paulo Costa does have that opportunity. If he fights Chimaev, he has that capability of knocking him out. But even better than the reward of actually just getting to fight Khamzat, I mean, it's the storyline and the trash talking entertainment that's just going to make the fight so incredible, especially for the fans. And that's what the organization wants. And that's 100% what Paulo Costa wants as well. And when it comes to Khamzat's side, it'll actually be interesting to see if Khamzat, being that submission-orientated, like, you know, chain wrestling fighter, to see if he can control Costa and actually be the first to submit Costa as well. So I think with Khamzat losing to Whittaker and Costa just going 5 rounds, I would make this fight for around mid-November as either a fight night headliner or possibly on UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi in late October as like possibly a co-main or maybe the third fight down. Now, moving on to Sean Strickland, pretty plain and simple. Give him the winner of Izzy versus Duplessis, which I believe that Izzy will get the win in that fight. I think Strickland, when you look at Strickland and you look at that fight, I mean, it's just more than likely he's going to get it either way. Because you've got Robert Whittaker. If Whittaker beats Khamzat Chimaev and then Izzy beats Duplessis, then you're looking at either Strickland versus Izzy 2 or you're looking at Whittaker versus Izzy 3. And let's be honest here, we want Strickland versus Izzy 2. We want to see if Izzy can redeem himself against the only fighter that's ever actually dominated him. I wouldn't say Jan Blachowicz dominated Izzy, not in the way that Strickland did. So I would safely say that Strickland is the only one that actually properly dominated him. And with that, we know Izzy wants that fight back 100%. And Strickland just wants the belt. So I think this is a fantastic matchup to make that redemption arc for Izzy and, you know, for Sean Strickland to get back on top. So I think you make this one for UFC 310 or UFC 311 early next year. Now, moving on to Islam Makhachev. Now, with Islam, I honestly think there are only 2 people who can actually give him a decent test at this point. I mean, he's just so overwhelmingly dominant. And I think the only 2 that you can give him are either Arman Sarukian or Leon Edwards. But even though Islam has been calling for that double champ status, he does only have that one defense against Poirier in the lightweight division. Yes, he has the defense against Volkanovski, which is obviously a fantastic defense to have that notch on your belt. But obviously Volk is that featherweight fighter where, you know, you want to see that traditional, you know, him beating the actual fighters in the actual division. And yeah, so he only has that one defense. So I think he does need to have someone in that division again. And I don't think that he is going to get that that same Conor McGregor treatment, having, little to no defenses and then getting to move up to fight Leon Edwards. I think the only person that's able to do that is literally Conor McGregor. And speaking of Conor McGregor, if Conor McGregor chins Chandler, I won't be surprised if they give him the Leon fight pretty much immediately. The UFC wants Conor back as the champion without a doubt. I mean, he just brings in too much money. He's so good for business. So any chance they get with that, they'll do it, which me saying that is taking away Islam even further from that Leon fight. So I think it does have to be Arman Tsarukyan. Which honestly, I don't think it's a bad fight by any means. Obviously, I think a lot of people would probably prefer the Leon fight, but there isn't a wrong answer here. Their first fight was extremely competitive, and he has gone Arman Tsarukyan has gone 9-1 since that Islam fight, and only lost to Gamrot, which was borderline controversial. It was a pretty razor-thin decision. I did edge it to Gamrot, but it was so razor-thin. So, I mean, he's had amazing momentum. I believe he's on a 4-fight win streak at the moment. I mean, he did very well against Charles Oliveira, sent Benil Dariush to the Shadow Realm, and I think that Arman, after that fight at 302 with Islam and Poirier, I think he'll be gaining a lot of confidence, as Poirier was just realistically, especially with that takedown defense, he just showed that Islam wasn't invincible. And he's already had that experience of fighting him before, and Arman was like 22 or something. I mean, he was so young, and I think he has a very good chance, honestly. I think overall it would be a fantastic fight, and I would put it on UFC 308. Put on UFC 308 as the headliner of Abu Dhabi. I think that's a complete no-brainer. That's just going to pull in so many numbers. Now, Dustin Poirier. Obviously, I do think, and it's probably pretty clear, that Dustin Poirier will retire, which I agree with. I think that's the best decision to make. But there is honestly probably only one fight I see them making that can make any form of sense. And I think that that's the BMF fight against Max Holloway. I mean, he's already beaten Max twice, and Max is arguably, honestly, probably the most popular guy in MMA at this point in time after that UFC 300 win. And Dustin Poirier gets a second chance at the BMF belt, and he would go in there with the confidence of already beating Holloway twice. And then Holloway would definitely be game to take that fight, because Dustin is the only one that has ever finished him. So I think that even though, as positive as Max is, I think that leaves a chip on anyone's shoulder. And I think that could really drive that fight to actually happening. And if this is to be made, which I honestly will be surprised if it is, because I think Poirier genuinely is gone now. But if it is, it would pull so many numbers, so many people would watch it. It'd be so good for business. It would be a fantastic way for Poirier to go out, and honestly probably could even eclipse that Islam title fight. If he wins, oh my God. If he wins, it would just be insane. And I think when you look at it, you would have to push it out a fair bit, though. I mean, I think you would probably have to put it somewhere early to mid next year, as I do think when it came to the matchups to make from UFC 300, I do think that Holloway will either be fighting to Poirier or Conor McGregor towards the end of this year. So I think you'd probably look at it possibly around March or April of next year. And speaking of Holloway being at the pinnacle of MMA at the moment, if you haven't already, check out my top 5 last second finishes in UFC history. I've just got it up here on the screen. If you want to see more MMA based content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.